Hey, welcome everyone. We almost forgot to go live because we were chatting all kinds of stuff in the backstage green room area. But you guys are in for a treat today. We are going to be talking about the Pumpkin Plan for MSPs. It is a fantastic book. I've read a previous version of it, and I looked at some of the sizzle and things like that. It's amazing. And I've got the two authors here with me today. We've got Sean Walsh and we've got Dave Kava. Why don't the two of you introduce yourselves and then we'll get on with the show?
Sure. I am Sean Walsh, partner at Encore Strategic, along with Dave. I had an MSP for 23 years that we built from the basement of the house till we got acquired by a large national service provider after expanding to 4 states. And when I got done, we weren't really expecting the offer. So I have had a teaching background. I wanted to go into something where I was teaching and working with people one on one. So started up Encore, and Dave jumped in with me, and this is what we're doing.
Amazing. All right, Dave, introduce yourself.
Okay, I had a MSP. I got cut my teeth in the .com world in the late '90s. Founded my MSP in 2007 along with a partner. Sold it in 2019. Built a $10 million MSP in 11 and a half years, but not without much pain and tribulation. So a lot of what we write about is kind of the things we learned the hard way, because we did learn a lot of them the hard way. And I was out of the industry for a couple of years after I sold my business, and Sean rescued me when I was looking to get back in, and here we are.
And was some of that the previous experience that you had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks? Is that what made you led you to the decision to write this book, or how did you come about this decision?
Well, Sean and I both love education, and we love helping MSPs, and we wanted to write a book. So Sean approached me, right? You want to tell the story of how that went down?
Yeah, so I was doing a speaking tour with ASCII, and Mike McAllowitz was the main keynote that year. And I had been part of Mike's consulting, Pumpkin Plan consulting group for a while. Now, I hadn't met him personally, but had been on a lot of Zoom calls with him. And then I get up on stage, and here comes Mike through the back door and sits down just as I'm about to present. I'm like, oh, really? He's going to sit in my thing? Oh, no pressure. So I went up, joked around with him afterwards. And over the course of, 10, 12 shows throughout the year, Mike and I got to be very friendly. And a lot of people don't realize it, but Mike actually, his first company was in the IT services space. So we got talking about that. And he had people who had written derivative books of profit first for specific industries.
Yes.
But he had never licensed Pumpkin Plan. So he asked Dave and I if we would be interested in writing the first derivative book for the Pumpkin Plan, since he came out of the same space we were in. So we looked at the licensing fee, and I kind of swallowed hard. And my first reaction was, Dave, I don't know that we want to spend this kind of money. But he said, well, if we spend that much, we're definitely going to write it. So, and I thought, that's a good point. So we agreed, and it took us about 18 months, and it was way more work than I think either one of us realized. Mm-hmm. But it was also way more insightful and way more fun than I think we both expected. And, in the end, I think we came out with a product that we're both very proud of. We've had very good feedback on, and we are just happy to come on things like this and share. And to your point, we didn't write the book because we're the smartest guys in the room. We wrote the book because we made every stupid mistake you could make in business, and yet we managed to survive. And I would hope that somebody could learn from our lessons and not have to experience the pain firsthand. So that was kind of our motivation, was to help the other people who are in the position that we were in when we were struggling.
Yeah.
So you both used the word education when you were talking about writing this book, or in your introduction, a little bit about your MSPs. So education is obviously a big thing for each of you. I'm curious, when you were running your MSP, I know we're here to talk about the book. We'll get to the book, I promise. But when you were running your MSP, was education part of your marketing strategy, or is that something that you've come to adopt lately?
Oh, I would say it wasn't part of our marketing strategy. It was part of our figure this thing out so we don't lose our shirt strategy. I mean, like, the story of how Sean and I met is that basically I went to a ConnectWise user group and prayed that I would meet somebody that could help me along in the business with more experience than me. And I wound up at dinner across from Sean. That's the first time we met. Uh, we have an innate desire to educate, but part of the reason why we feel like it's so important to mentor other people and to educate other people, whether it's at a conference or a one-on-one coaching situation or through a book, is that, as much as we learned many, many things the hard way, we were able to shortcut, some of the pain and suffering by learning from people around us in peer groups and conferences and things like that. And there's no way that my MSP would have ever got where it got to without community and without the input of others and without learning great things from people who had walked the road before me.
I love it. So you've both mentioned mistakes. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see MSPs making today?
The biggest one is when we go into a new client, we start a consulting engagement, and I ask somebody, okay, tell me what your net profit was at the end of last year. And they look at me and they go, well, I think it was about around, and I just go, stop. So you have no idea what it really is. We just had a meeting with a person that I've known for many years, and when I asked him that, the response was, I don't know. I haven't gotten my tax return back yet for last year. And I just said, oh, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. Right out of the gate, people don't know their numbers, and this is an interest. Any business, you have to know your numbers, but I think even more so in this business because the financial model is so exacting, and you've got to have each component of it dialed in. So the first thing when we work with somebody, it's like, break out QuickBooks or whatever accounting software you're using. We're redoing your chart of accounts. We're getting this cleaned up. I want to be able to tell a story every time I look at your P&L. Nice.
Dave, how about you? Anything to add?
Oh, there's so many mistakes to make in the MSP business. I'll put it this way, that you can focus on your business, your clients, or your employees, right? You really need to focus on all three. And most focus on the clients and the technology, then the team, then the fundamentals and the numbers in the business. And it really should be turned on its head. Every business is about numbers. It's about money. Most MSPs never run the basic metric that says revenue minus costs equals profit. They don't know how to price things because they don't know their costs and they don't have a plan for profit, right? And then they're so focused on the technology, which is what they like, which is usually what drew them into the business in the first place. And they're focused on keeping clients happy. The team becomes a byproduct, something to be used to keep the clients happy. And if you focus on having an excellent business model and you focus on having excellent people and treating them well, the clients and the technology will take care of itself. So there's this kind of reverse engineering the business for almost everybody that gets into it and says you're focused on the last thing first and the first thing last. Awesome. What's your business plan? How are you going to make money?
Yes.
It's pretty basic, but it's something you see the overwhelming majority of MSPs get wrong. Let me find the right tools, and let me make sure I'm keeping everyone happy. They start there, and it doesn't get them to good places.
Yeah, and the other mistake, Jennifer, is when they're selling to that point. They sell technology when they should be selling business results. Yes. Because they're comfortable with technology. And a lot of people who start MSPs come from the engineering background, and selling is not a space of comfort for them. So they immediately go to what they're comfortable with and what they know, which is technology. The reality is their clients could care less about the technology. They just want a certain business result. And then they lose deals and they wonder why, because they think I did such a good job. I prepared, I gave them all the details.
I
And
had a
the
great
problem,
solution. Yeah.
right? The problem is when you walked out of the room, the prospect looked at the four proposals in front of them and they said, well, that person said the exact same thing the other three MSPs said, so therefore I can safely go with the low bidder because there's no differentiation here.
Yeah, I call it the salesperson says so much technical that we end up with a bobblehead prospect.
Yeah.
They just do this. They don't
Yes.
really understand what you're saying, but they just keep giving you this nod with the glazed
Yeah.
over eyes because they really don't know what you're saying.
Well,
Yeah.
and sometimes they do because they've heard it so many times that they've figured it out and they go, uh-huh. And I tell people, when your client is agreeing with your prospect is agreeing with you, you are not winning despite what you think because
Yeah.
you're not telling them anything new. When they cock their head and they go, nobody's ever told me that before. Now you're winning because you have given them knowledge they didn't already have and you've told them something they haven't heard. So now you have created a differentiation.
One of my favorite sales calls as a prospect was when the salesperson asked me a question, ironically, about a number, a metric in my business. And I stopped and said, I don't know the answer to that, but I should. And I'm like, in that moment, his standing as a salesperson in
Yeah.
my world shifted because he gave me so much value just by asking me a question that I should have known the answer to. And I'm like, none of the other salespeople asked me that. They all just talked features and benefits and blah blah blah. But he asked questions. So I love that. Okay, let's circle back to the book for a second because it's a little bit of an unusual name, the Pumpkin Plan. Like none of us are farmers. Most of us are not growing pumpkins or cantaloupes or anything in our backyard, especially this summer seems to be especially brutal for growing things. So why are we talking about pumpkins when we're talking about MSPs?
Dave, you take.
Okay. Well, that it comes from Mike Michalowicz's original book. So basically, we licensed the book, The Pumpkin Plan, and we were able to use up to 15% of the content. So it's over 85% original content. But the whole concept of the Pumpkin Plan is that you grow a great entrepreneurial business in the same way that you grow a pumpkin. You start with the right seed, which is kind of your unique offering. Um, you you pull out the weeds, stop selling other things, stop selling to clients that aren't a fit. You water, which is sell all you can, but sell the right thing to the right people. Then you weed some more. Basically, you look at who your lousy clients are, who's really straining your staff and stressing them out, and who's not profitable. And essentially, the final aspect is watching it grow, which is adding process and starting to see viral sales because you're dialed into a particular market. You know who you're marketing to, and and really seeing the business blossom. So the whole idea was based on the concept that the way a pumpkin grows is the same way a business grows. A prize winning pumpkin,
Yes.
because it's all about focus, right? Because especially in the MSP world, most companies start out, they'll sell anything to anyone, and then they wind up being very inefficient, not knowing how to target their marketing. They're just spraying buckshot everywhere, all over the place, all the time, and wondering why nothing great is happening. Instead of figuring out what they do best, who it's the best fit for, and driving right for that, and pushing away everything else.
Love it. All right, so I'm going to display on the screen. If you are driving, do not look at the screen, but go to encorestrategic.io and you can either download a chapter of the book, you can get the entire book from Amazon. I'll leave that on the screen so you can grab it. But while that's up there, I want to shift because Dave, you said something at the very beginning talking about the concept of pumpkin farmers, like the seed is your offering, the weeds are the smaller clients or the bad clients, the pain in the
And the
anatomy
shiny
clients.
objects, the things that are going to distract you from
Yeah,
what you should really be focused on.
because the whole point is growth. And for a lot of people, ultimately, they're growing so that they can sell the company. So, what are some of the things that we can do if we are looking at, I'm an MSP, I want to sell my company, I'm adopting the concept that I'm growing my company like a farmer would grow a massive prize-winning pumpkin. What are some of the things I need to do to keep my business healthy? And then conversely, what are some of the things that I should stop doing or make sure that I don't start doing? And that's for either one of you.
So we have a talk that we do, and it's called the 8 factors of valuation. And one of those factors is EBITDA, but that's the one you hear about all the time.
Yes.
And EBITDA is an important number. It's your profit. That's most sales are based on a multiple of that number. So it's obviously very important that you have a healthy number there. But everybody forgets about the other 7 factors, and those are the things that
Am I going to trip you? She likes arguing. Am I going to trip you up if I add some nuance to that?
No.
Well, hold on a second. Let me finish my thought.
All right, I don't want to trip you up. I'll try not to forget what I was going to say.
So, what the other 7 factors are the things that affect the multiple of the EBITDA that you're going to get, and that's where a lot of business owners forget to look at those details. And one of the number one things, I won't go through all 7. I leave a little surprise for somebody who wants to maybe join a future webcast. But one of the ones that we see most common is what we call the hub and spoke. The owner doesn't get out of the middle of processes. They become the choke point, and they don't even realize it. They have to have their hands in everything. And if you're a business owner and you're growing this company to sell it at some point and retire, one of the key things you have to be focused on is getting yourself out of the business. You as an entrepreneur your goal should be to be working on the business 100% of the time and in the business 0% of the time. When we were talking with Mike, he made a comment one day that kind of stuck with me. He said, if you're an entrepreneur and you're working in your business, he said, you're really stealing a job from somebody. I said, what do you mean? He said, an entrepreneur's job is to create jobs for others. It's not to do the job. If you're doing the job, you're self-employed. If you're teaching others how to do the job and you're staying out of the middle of it, now you're really an entrepreneur.
Amazing. All right, Dave, rebuttal.
Not a rebuttal, some nuance. We have this in the book. I tell people all the time that in most cases, a buyer will decide whether they want to buy you based on the amount of MRR that you have, and they will decide what to pay based on the amount of EBITDA you have. So those are both really important metrics. And there's still a lot of MSPs out there that don't realize that the MRR is weighted probably 90% more than ever all the other kinds of revenue that they have. In a sense, it's really the only thing that matters from a buyer's perspective.
Absolutely.
So knowing that number and focusing on that number and focusing on profitability, but then also growing that book of business while removing yourself from the business. Piece of cake.
Add a whole bunch of process in there, and you pretty much got it nailed down.
It's interesting. Let me ask you this, and I don't want to take too much away from your 8 or 9 points. I don't want to steal your secret sauce, but one of the things that I've heard from a couple of business brokers, is that they do pay a higher percentage of EBITDA when there are processes in place, documented processes, perhaps when it is the owner is not involved in that process, although we've never had that conversation. But are you finding the same thing, that a process-driven organization drives the multiple up just a bit?
It can drive it up a lot because, the companies that become the platform companies, when you talk about roll-ups, are the ones that have awesome process. They're looking for companies with really great process that then they can bring other MSPs into and say, okay, we're pulling you in. Now you're going to follow their process. And at least private equity will pay significantly more for a platform company if they feel like this is the lead dog that we're going to fit everyone else in with. I mean, we just had one of our clients who was acquired by a small private equity to be a platform company, and they didn't even have a tremendous amount of revenue. It was a little over $3 million in revenue, but the multiple they got is a multiple that almost no other $3 million company is going to see, because that company was incredibly, the private equity was incredibly impressed with their processes and some of the unique things that they had done to be able to service $3.5 million in revenue with 8 people. Like,
Their maturity level on the process side was more, they were more running more like a $10 million company than a $3 million company. And one of the problems is a lot of people say, well, we're not big enough to have process that detailed. We'll get to it. I got news for you. By the time when you start getting that revenue in, you're too busy to sit down and write the process.
Yes.
I
And
lived it. I mean,
the comment I use all the time is it's the double-edged sword of entrepreneurship. We have gotten to this point because we can do everything in our company. And we can be the salesperson, we can be the technician, we can be the HR, the finance person, whatever it takes, we can do it. There is not a single hat in your company that you can't wear as an entrepreneur. And the problem is you're going to get to a certain point and not be able to get past it because you're still doing everything in the company and it's still all up here. It's not a documented, repeatable process.
And sometime at some point in the life of the business, you have to shift from offloading or hiring people to do things that you're not good at and you don't like, to hiring people to do things that you are good at and you do like, but you need to find someone better than yourself. And that's a tough,
or at least somebody that isn't you.
right, something that isn't you. Yes. So that's a bit of a mindset shift, because instead of me giving up finance, that I'm like, oh, please slit my wrists, I don't want to have to balance my checkbook, and yes, I will look at my P&L, but I don't want to categorize expenses, and I hire an accountant or a CPA or a bookkeeper to do that. Then all of a sudden, if I'm the technician having to hire technical people, or for me, I love marketing and sales, hiring a marketing and salesperson, there's a different mindset there. So can we pivot and talk about hiring for a while? Because I know this is a thorn in the side. It's a mandatory part of growing an organization, but it is not something that has traditionally been easy for MSPs to figure out. So what do MSPs get wrong when they're hiring? What hints, tips, like what's the 20% that's going to get 80% of the results? Let's just park on hiring for a while, because I know it's a massive pain point.
You're speaking my language.
Okay.
I would say that for small MSPs, the most common problem has already been alluded to. It's that we set things up for the hub and spoke. In that, basically, a great MSP lifestyle business that's going to have a real hard time getting any bigger is what I call the 10 guys and an owner company. Where the owner is still the de facto service manager, still the highest level technical resource, still doing the sales, and has a bunch of help around, some administrative help and a bunch of technical muscle. And you can build a terrific $3 million company that is pushing 20% to the bottom line and have a great life. But if you want to build something bigger, that's just not going to work. If you want to be able to go on vacation very much, that's not going to work. So I would say the most rudimentary mistake that growing MSPs make is not developing leaders sooner. We have a sample 10-person Visio org chart, and when I'm working with small MSPs, I say, let's talk about your staff and how it compares to this. Not that you need to do things exactly this way, but notice there's a service manager, there's a dispatcher, there's a senior engineer, and the owner should be out of all three of those seats by the time you're 10 people. I tell people hires 6 to 10 are extremely important. Because that's where you're introducing structure. The goal is, by the time you get to 10 people, you've got a service organization that can function day to day without the owner's involvement. The owner can disappear and go to Bora Bora for a month, and nothing is going to happen on the client side that's going to require the owner's intervention. For larger MSPs, I would say the biggest issue is hiring by what I call plugging the dam.
Hmm.
Basically, the way a lot of MSPs hire is they go, we've got more work than we can handle. We just lost 2 people. These clients are mad at us. We need to go hire some people. And that's their hiring strategy, which is really no strategy at all. I like to tell the story of when I had my MSP and we were growing very fast. Like I said, we built a $10 million MSP in 11 years. You can imagine some of the growing pains and strain that were in there. And at some point, personnel became a real strain. And we paid a lot of money to recruiters. We paid $152,000 to recruiters in 12 months with pretty mediocre results. And at the same time, we were not very profitable. We were growing like crazy, but we were not very profitable. So I went and interviewed some MSPs that I knew of. They were the only ones that I knew of that were growing as fast as we were, but making a lot more money. And I wasn't trying to find out anything about hiring or recruiting or personnel. I was just trying to figure out why they were making more money than we were. And Sean's was one of them, by the way. But I came to figure out that they were all using aptitude testing in their hiring process. They'd gotten the owners and the managers out of the early stages of the recruiting process. They were all highly focused at the entry level. They all had training tracks and career roadmaps. And basically, the way I put it like most MSPs are plugging dams, and the really operationally mature ones are building armies. They're very proactive about their hiring. They get very smart culture fits with great work ethics early in their career. They get them trained in their way of doing things. They promote them through the company. They are not going out to the open market and paying top dollar for somebody that switched jobs 3 times in the last 5 years. And they just wind up with a tremendous advantage. And now the data shows it. I came across a crazy statistic a couple of weeks ago that the best-in-class MSPs, top quartile of MSPs, as measured by service leadership, pay 13% less for the same positions in their companies. You'd think they'd pay more. They pay less because they've done those things and they have a great place to work and people want to stick around.
So unpack for me, you said something that I'm having trouble reconciling, which is they're promoting from within. So that's great, but only if you already have some people in your organization that you want to promote that are worthy of promoting. If you're not good at hiring, let's assume you hired a bad egg who can't be trained up, can't be made into a leader, shouldn't be promoted to their level of inefficiency. Then you do have to go outside. So what do you recommend in that situation?
Well, I mean, not everybody is going to rocket through your organization, of course, but we're very intentional in our hiring process. I run our recruiting division. I should have mentioned that. So I'm knee deep in this stuff all day long. But we hire for hungry, humble, smart. Is the way Patrick Lencioni put it. We like to talk about work ethic, culture fit, and brains, which is another way of saying something similar. So when you bring somebody in at a lower level that doesn't have potential to go to a higher level, we see that as a waste. And we think it's pretty easy to identify potential. You don't get it right 100% of the time, but you can probably get it right 70% of the time instead of just taking a wild guess and being right 25% of the time. So to directly answer your question, there are times where you need a level 3 technician. There's no one to promote, and you have to go out to the open market. But the best MSPs are filling more than half of those positions, from inside.
So from the point that you realized, wow, we are spending a whole lot of money with recruiting agencies that are not really giving us the results that we want, to talking to a handful of people that were doing their own recruiting, I'm assuming, how did that process go? I can't imagine the first time you decided to hire was a slam dunk, although I could be wrong. So walk me through that process, because I'm assuming there is a decent learning curve there.
Can you clarify the question for me a little?
Yeah, for sure. So at the point that you decided to bring hiring inside and you decided,
right,
I'm going to hire myself, was the first hire a resounding success? And if not, what did that learning curve look like? How long was it before you had hiring figured out?
Got it. So we were, gosh, probably 7 or 8 years into our MSP when we brought the recruiting internal, and it wasn't so much that it was internal as we started doing it completely differently, and we did get it right very quickly because we had gone around and learned everything we could from the people that were really, really doing it well. So I hired a woman who was 25 years old with no recruiting experience. I said, I've been running around learning all these things. We're going to pull something from here and something from there. We're going to develop our own process, me and you, and then you're going to try it. Are you game? And that's what we did. So
Totally, it's getting the owner out of that and bringing someone in who has a natural aptitude for
the
that
owner
type
can't
of
do it. The owner can't do it.
Yeah.
Because not only is the owner's time really valuable, there's usually a lot of stress and strain on it. There's a zillion reasons for the owner not to be doing the recruiting in a growing company. But probably the biggest one that you want to get the owner and managers out of there is that it's going to get done with their leftover time. They're going to lose days in the process. They're going to cut corners because they've got a million other responsibilities. I tell people, if you want to bring recruiting inside, don't do it until it can be at least half of somebody's job. And that probably shouldn't be an HR person, because recruiting is sales, and kind of the personality profile is completely different from the person that is registering for people for benefits and running background checks and intervening in intercompany squabbles. It's a totally different profile. You want somebody that is trying to close deals, because that's what recruiting is.
Love it. Sean, anything to add on that hiring spot? What do MSPs get wrong when it comes to hiring?
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned, you said, okay, you got this employee, and that they've maybe got they're a really great level one, but they're not going to go further. That in and of itself isn't necessarily somebody that you need to get rid of. I came into IT from a law enforcement background, and I say, every department has 20-year patrolmen. There's somebody, they just want to go out, do their shift every day. They're really good at the fundamentals, and they don't want to get promoted. They don't want to move up, but they knock out the bulk of the work every day. And in a team, yes, you need people who are moving up, but occasionally every MSP has their 20-year patrolman on the help desk who knows their process, knows their fundamentals. It doesn't so much concern me that they've kind of plateaued early. It's more important that they are matching your core values. And you've got to look at every hire and go, does this person align with our core values? Do they consistently reflect them? Because I've seen more MSPs that are damaged and their brand is destroyed because they hold on to employees who do not align with their core values, because they go, oh my God, that person has this technical knowledge we can't live without. I guarantee you, I have seen it over and over again. Every time when somebody tells me they can't fire that person and they finally fire them, everybody else on the team says, what took you so long? And
Yes.
then the thing they didn't expect happens. Everybody in the team steps up to fill the void. I have never, ever had anybody say, I'm really sorry I fired that jerk because things are just horrible since we got rid of them. No, everybody says, thank God we finally did it. Why did we wait so long?
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, right? Like it hurts for a split second.
Absolutely. You've got to, that is the most important thing. Not technical knowledge, not how fast they're going up through the company. It's how well do they reflect your core values. I can teach you technical stuff. I cannot teach you how to be a decent human being.
Yes.
So.
I love it.
Well, when we talk about culture, work ethic and brains, that's the culture piece. Sean didn't say one thing that I would disagree with. And I guess what sews what he said together with what I said is you should always be shooting for the people who can progress in their career. If what you wind up with is the 20-year patrolman, that's cool. Every chessboard needs pawns, rooks, and knights. Like that's not a bad.
It's not fatal.
No.
You don't want an entire team like that, but if you have one or two people, you don't need to be like, oh my God, I got to fire that person because they're not moving up. No, there's a place for people like that. But
This
the
is why we
core,
were able to write a good book together. Because when I nitpick him, it makes us better. When he nitpicks me, it makes us better. Like
Yes.
we're a good team.
If
But
everybody agreed all the time, life would be very, very boring. Okay, so we are here
we
talking about
agree. We just kind of agree.
you kind of agree. You didn't say I disagree with you. You said, well, there's nuance there, which is like the polite
there
way of
is.
saying I disagree with you just a little. All right. So
My
we're
business,
here.
my business partner at MSP was consummate sales guy, and whenever somebody said something he thought was crazy, he'd go, "Well, there's that," and just keep talking. Like the
Yeah, my semi-adult child will say, "Well, respectfully, I disagree," and then he'll tell you why you're wrong, because as young adults, of course, they are always right. Okay, so we are here talking to Sean. We're talking to Dave. We're talking about the Pumpkin Plan for managed service providers. On the screen is their website. You can go there, download a free chapter. It'll route you to Amazon to get the entire book if you would like. And we're chatting about hiring and mistakes that MSPs are making. If you missed some of that early on, definitely go back and watch some of the replay. Really, really good things. We've got a few minutes left, and Dave, you said that one of the ways that you greatly accelerated the success of your MSP was to find colleagues, to find peers. And in this industry, there's a lot of peer groups. There's a lot of options in terms of peer groups. What are some of the top 2 or 3 things you recommend people look for in a peer group? I know I said Dave, but Sean, let's have you go first on this one.
Sure. So, and shameless plug, we Encore, one of our core services is that we run peer groups. And the reason why we do that is because it was so valuable for Dave and I in growing our companies, and I saw the value and wanted to get involved. But there were a few things about some of the peer groups out there that I saw that I kind of said, boy, I think we could improve on that. And number one is we see a lot of peer groups that over time will kind of devolve into a social club. Some of the companies grow, some don't. Some people are just coming there because they want to hang out with their friends, and we love that people are building relationships that are that important. I still to this day talk every week with the people from my original peer group, but in our peer groups, we have them tiered. And one of the things you should look for in a peer group is, are they truly putting you with your peers? Because, and when you grow, do they promote you? And, one of the things that we do is if somebody's sitting there and they're coming into a meeting complaining about the same thing, meeting after meeting and not doing anything, and they're not progressing, they get demoted. And so are they really keeping you together with the right people? The other thing is, are they holding you accountable? Or, are they softballing everything? Or are they saying, hey, wait a second, you said you were going to do this and you didn't. What are you going to do to correct that? So, are you practicing the tough love in the group? That's important. Peer groups are about having a support system, but they're ultimately about having a group of people that can talk at your level and can hold you accountable and can call you out on your own BS when you start doing it.
Support, not enablement. Support.
Exactly. I mean, that's
Yes.
the thing. You don't want to be an enabler. And I told people, I said, my peer group helped me up off the ground when I got my butt kicked, and they knocked me down a few pegs when my head got too big. So they keep you in that sweet spot.
That's awesome. I love it. Dave, peer groups.
Well, there's a chapter when we were writing the book. It was late into the writing of the book when I went to Sean and I said, I really feel like something's missing here. Like the community has had such an impact on our businesses, and we wouldn't be here together today if not for a ConnectWise user group years ago. And Sean and I were in several peer groups together, and we pushed each other. We helped each other. We pushed each other. We always had a chip on our shoulders. You always want to. I always wanted to have 2 or 3 guys whose companies were better than mine in my peer group, because I want to catch him. I want to kick his butt. Like but there's actually it's a great chapter. I got to interview Arlen Sorensen. I interviewed Jameson West.
Amazing.
Went talk about the history of HTG and which is now Evolve and how that got off the ground and really where MSP peer groups came from. But then there's a whole section on what makes a great peer group. And it really is a litmus test because I'll just say this: we don't like to trash anybody because a lot of them are our friends, but some out there are better than others, and they're also designed to deliver different things. You definitely have to realize that not all peer groups are created equal, and if they're not talking about business strategy and delving into financial details, they'll help you, but you may have a really big blind spot that never gets surfaced. So it's got to be more than just a bunch of people hanging around and talking about their businesses.
Yeah, you have to know what problem you're looking to solve so that you can make sure the peer group you're talking to is positioned in such a way that they can help you solve that problem, not another problem.
Yeah. And one of the things that I tell people is, you know what, you don't have to join our peer group. Our peer group might not be the best fit for you. You should go interview several peer groups and you should figure out where the right fit is. But I tell them, you don't have to join my peer group, but join a peer group. But there are ones that are better than others out there, and you should do the due diligence. But don't just join it because your friend's in it or because somebody told you. Do your research. There are differences. One of the things that I think is one of our strengths that, and some groups agree and some don't, is, we try to make sure that every facilitator is somebody who has actually built and exited a company. I want that real world experience in there. That's my preference, though. Other groups run differently, and that's fine. Maybe you want that, so you join our group, but maybe that's not what you're looking for, and there's other groups out there for it.
Yes, I like it. Yeah, I agree with you too. There are some that are a little bit like the blind leading the blind, and so they are not necessarily focused on the strategy, but they do provide the camaraderie and the
Absolutely.
relationships. And so again, knowing yourself, like what are you looking for? I mean, clearly there are several thriving businesses with peer groups. So there is probably something for everyone, but if you don't know yourself, you don't know which peer group to select. So,
Yeah, good self-awareness is important in that. You really truly have to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, and one of the things that we're big fans of is doing personality profiling to help people understand that. And I strongly recommend, if you're not sure, do some of that and have somebody coach you through and debrief you on an assessment like that, so that maybe you can understand what blind spots you really need to shore up and have reinforcements for going forward.
I love it. Oh, we are almost out of time. We've got about a minute or two. Any last minute thoughts before we wrap up?
I guess I have one more thought on the peer groups. Like they really serve two functions, right? One is you have to know what great looks like for an MSP before you can know whether you match up. And then you need a group of people around you that are going to encourage you and hold you accountable. And a great peer group is going to do those things. So.
Awesome. Sean, any last minute thoughts?
Yeah, if you really want to grow an organization that will outlive you and that can run without you, you really need to be dedicated to lifelong learning, and you need to be able to say, you know what, I can do this better, or hey, I made a mistake, and own it and fix it and learn how to do it and move on. But having a coach and having a peer group, and reading books, not just ours. There's a lot of good. I have a reading list that I give our members that's got about 120 on there, and you really need to be committed to lifelong learning and improvement if you want to hit those marks.
I would love a copy of that list. If you would email me that when we're done, because I am a lifelong learner. I have an Audible queue that'll probably take me the next 3, maybe 2 years to get through. And books on the shelf and books here and books everywhere. So I am a lifelong learner. I also, my little cheat is to go to Chat GPT and get a really long synopsis, not just like a paragraph or two, but like really, really long, for those books that I'd like to skim. And it's a great way to do it. But yes, send me that book list. That would be amazing. And if you are just joining us at the tail end of this, make sure that you go out to Dave and Sean's website. It's on the screen, and get a copy of the Pumpkin Plan for MSPs. It talks about how to grow your business sanely, the hiring, the promotion, the culture, the numbers and metrics that you need to be paying attention to. So almost like an encyclopedia, but much more concise, much more digestible. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thank you for having us.
Last word. One of our core values is share first, profit later. You can get us on LinkedIn. You can get us to the website. We love talking to MSPs. Just feel free to
Amazing.
reach out. So
Excellent.